and we were all kind of snapping at each other a little bit, but not sure what's going on, what we were going to be doing, and the heat was miserable. They had us started doing stuff like setting up tents for other guys that were coming in and building outhouses and doing what I considered kind of menial stuff. I went out and checked around the compound where we were staying to find out what kind of security it had, and I was kind of shocked that we were kind of sitting there in the open for anybody to mess with. And I asked some of the guys on the perimeter what experience they had with security, and some of them said, I'm a desk clerk. I haven't fired my weapon since basic training.
Ask a Vet is dedicated to documenting and preserving veteran stories in their own words on their own terms before their stories are gone forever. Each episode is an unfiltered conversation about who they were before service during war and their adjustment to coming home. If you believe these stories matter, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your support helps us preserve the voices of those who served. Ask a Vet is proud to partner with Utah Honor Flight, part of the National Honor Flight Network, giving veterans the trip of a lifetime to Washington, D.C. to visit the memorials built in their honor. Every flight is free to veterans and made possible by generous donors. To learn more or support the mission, visit utahhonorflight.org or find your local hub at honorflight.org. And now back to the show.
My name is Jesse Clifton, and I'm originally from Florida, so don't hold that against me. But I moved up here when I was probably about 14 with my dad and my stepmom. And we lived around in different areas, started out in Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and then eventually settled in North Carolina.
Do you come from a military background, your family?
Well, yes and no. A lot of the family members on my mom's side and my dad's side were all in different branches of service: Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines.
Was your dad in the military?
No, he wasn't. For whatever reason, he wasn't able to be in the military.
And what made you want to join the military?
Well, one reason is because as I grew up, I kind of looked towards the military as sort of like a heroic organization that protected the people. And I liked, I grew up in a service-oriented family. Like my dad was a firefighter. I grew up around the fire department. That's what I wanted to do, was become a firefighter or law enforcement or military, some kind of service-oriented type thing.
And okay, give me your trajectory then. What happened next?
Well, as I was going through high school, I figured out that my grades were not going to get me a scholarship, and I wasn't very athletic, kind of like goofy. You know, I goofed my way through things. If I was any way successful in a sport, it was by complete accident. But I decided that if I wanted to try to go to college and better my life, and also try to be helpful to people, that the military was the way to go. Recruiters had come to our school. They said, well, if you want to go into the Army, you can go to basic and come back and start college. Well, I kind of misinterpreted what he was saying. So after my 11th year, I dropped out, took a few months break, and went and talked to him. And he said, no. We meant for you to go to basic during summer break, come back, get your high school diploma, then go back into the active duty.
Were you 17? How old were you?
I was 18.
18, okay.
17 or 18, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So they would not take me. So I went to college for a little bit in one of the community colleges and took the ASVAB, and the National Guard said they would take me as an MP. That was right up my alley. It was local. It was kind of what I wanted to do.
Okay. So you signed up, and then what happened?
Went off to basic at Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Go ahead.
Almost got sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And thankfully, it worked out that I got to go to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and go all the way through basic and AIT.
Describe basic for me for you.
Well, my dad had a lot of military influence because of his family's history. So a lot of that order and being barked at and stuff like that, I was kind of used to.
If you or someone you know isn't getting the VA benefits you've earned, click the link in our description. We've teamed up with a group of experts that help veterans build stronger VA claims and get the benefits they deserve. Click the link in our description for a free consultation.
So when I got there, that wasn't too much of a shock, although that first night I did honestly lay on my cot and wonder how far I could get out the window and down the road before the MPs caught me. And I wondered how many other guys were thinking that, but we made it through the first night, made it through the first few weeks. Where at that point, I was starting to get an upper respiratory infection, and I was staying sick every day. I couldn't keep anything down. And they had this policy that if you went to sick call, you missed training, and you would have to restart. Go to PT first, then go to sick call. So I said, well, if I have to go to PT, I'll just go on to, throughout my day. But every day I was sick until they found me passed out in the bathroom, dehydrated, took me to the hospital, dropped me off there in Fort McClellan, and I had a bad upper respiratory infection there for a couple of weeks before I restarted with a new company.
Wow. That must have been depressing.
It was, because even though the Army has certain standards, all the different training companies have their own little way of doing things. So when I got there, I thought, okay, well, I'll just jump right in. And the platoon that I used to be in was not in the same place. The way they did things were a little different. So the platoon they told me to go to, I ran up and I went into where I thought it was supposed to be. Turned out to be the females platoon. The sign had been taken down because they were painting the door. I came out quickly and learned that it was a different order in that way, and the way they expected things to be done was a little bit different, according to the way the drill sergeants liked it.
Okay, what happened after that?
Well, after I got through basic and my MOS school.
And where was that at?
I was also in Fort McClellan, Alabama.
How was that?
Well, it was very hot. Well, it started out kind of cold when I went, and they would start us out in shorts and a T-shirt in the morning, and you would stand there shaking, but you didn't stay shaking for long because once they got you moving, you warmed up pretty quickly. So every other day we did strength training or running. We would do that like Monday through Saturday, and Sunday you would either go to some kind of services somewhere, or they would assign you to different things to do around the barracks.
Did you enjoy your MOS?
I did.
Training?
I did enjoy my MOS training because being law enforcement was something I kind of wanted to do because I wanted to protect people. That was always been something I've been kind of geared towards, trying to protect and serve, and that's where I thought I could do it at.
Okay, and finish that up. What happened after that?
Well, I came back to my regular duty station, which was in Murphy, North Carolina, and wasn't long after I'd gotten back that we found out we were going to go to the Philippines for a deployment.
And what year would this be? What year was this?
I want to say that it was in 86 because I had a fiance and I wanted her to be protected by whatever protection she had as my wife if something should happen to me while I was there. So we went ahead and got married in October of 86, and then I went off to the Philippines not long after that.
How was the Philippines?
It was a nice duty. We were guarding beans and bullets, I guess you'd say.
What do you mean beans and bullets?
Well, they had, I guess, to give relief and also as part of our training, but to give relief to the units that were there, they had us guarding the ammo storage areas that were being brought in, and whatever other food and stuff that was being brought in and stored there. They had us working guard for that. And I was also on like a special reactions team. And so it was our job to respond to any incidents that came up. So I'll tell you a quick story about that. I was thought in my head that I was off. So I was kind of up, going out, having some fun. And one of my sergeants ran into me and said, Clifton, your team has been called out on a mission. And I thought we were off. They've been called out. So he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And so I went back to where we were staying at, got all my stuff together, and I went out and I flagged down. Well, once I found out where they were at, I flagged down a Philippine police officer, told him where I needed to go. He took me there. I went through security with the Filipino workers, got on the bus with the Filipino workers, and I was towering above most of them in there. Or something interesting to them, like a monkey. And then we went out and got off the bus, and I got out there with my patrol to secure the area. And then my sergeant come out there and found me walking patrol, guard duty. He said, I told him what I did to get there, and he said, well, you were in trouble, but I guess you're not now.
That's pretty good. What was the mission out there? Was it anything interesting?
And mostly just doing guard duty and being on patrol, making sure nobody messed with the stuff that was there. But I had a couple interesting incidents with someone coming out there taking photography and everyone was supposed to have authorization to be there. So when confronted about the authorization, he got angry and started coming towards me. And I was very kind of young and dumb, so that was probably not a very good time to test me. And I almost took him down. So I don't know if this guy was a legitimate threat or he was just someone there to test me. But he backed off as soon as he seen my posture. And and we walked over and seen the Marines that we were kind of working under and turned them over to them.
Was that fun?
It was fun to a certain degree. I liked being in the Philippines. The barracks we stayed at, they had people that worked, Filipinos that worked there. They would come and take care of your barracks, shine your boots, do your uniform, make your bed. And it was very reasonable, about $30 a month, $30 a month. And I thought, I could live like this, not have to worry about all that, just go on duty and get off and do my thing.
Give me the duties of an MP, in the military. Talk about that.
Well, after we did the Philippines, we'd also went to doing disaster relief in different areas of the U.S. for like when Hurricane Hugo hit, they deployed us there to help keep that area secure because all the traffic lights were out and they were concerned about theft and pillaging and stuff like that.
What was that like for you?
Well, we felt like after we got there, we were doing something good, but at a certain point, we were all kind of wanting to help up with the cleanup because we did work with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg police on patrol, patrolling the city. Some rode with us in our Humvees, and some of us rode with them, patrolling around, just trying to make sure everything stayed in check and directing traffic. But we also would have liked to have helped with the cleanup some too. At a certain point, everybody was behaving themselves pretty well.
But you guys didn't get to help clean up.
No, we didn't.
It was just all keeping the peace.
Enforcement duties.
Was it frustrating because you felt like stuff should have been getting cleaned up? Was that what you're saying?
Yeah, at a certain point, we felt like we weren't being useful for the time we were there because there wasn't everybody. The people in the community were not being bad. They weren't stealing stuff.
Yeah,
maybe because of our presence, but we would have liked to have helped them in some way because that's what we did when we went to different areas of disaster. We would help with providing food or help with the cleanup, not just security. We'd do as many things as we could to help.
Okay. That's good. And what followed after that?
Let's see. We went to Honduras. We went to California, where we went out on border patrol.
And what was that similar to that? Late 80s then at that point?
It was, late 80s.
And tell me what happened on the border for you?
Well, pretty much at that time, they just said for us to sit and observe. And that's what we did. We were there to make a presence, but we had our hands tied pretty much. They didn't want us to do anything but sit and observe.
Where were you at that point?
Close to San Diego, at a big tent city, and we would watch, things going on, and then just go back to our camp.
What did you see?
Well, we seen people climbing the fence, and while the border patrol were all down getting people on one end, they were all coming over at another end, and it was just constant like that. And they said, "Don't do anything, just watch and report." So that's what we did. After California,
Wait. So nothing happened.
nothing happened.
Was that frustrating?
Well, it was kind of frustrating because there again, we thought we could be used in a greater capacity than what we were being used.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah,
they would just send you down there to watch and not do anything.
And that happens a lot. It's just a presence. They want you to be seen, and it was also part of our training. So each year they would send us 2 to 3 weeks somewhere, and they'd say, "Okay, go here for 2 to 3 weeks, help them do this," but we don't really want you to do anything related to your job other than maybe watch and see what's going on, provide some security for the camp while, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Then what happened after that?
Let's see. So I mentioned we went to Philippines, Honduras.
What happened in Honduras?
Again, we were down there providing security for the camp and the operations center while other units were going out from there to do missions related to Manuel Noriega and stuff that was going on there. So those guys could come back and sleep in their tents and rest and recover. We tried to just make sure that they felt safe.
Did any incursions happen there or not really?
Not right where we were at. Now, where they were going out to was a different story, but we were just trying to keep things secure for them where they could come back and rest.
Yeah.
We had Marines there. We had Navy SEALs staying there.
Were you able to tell people you were down there or no?
They didn't like us to tell anybody anything. And sometimes they didn't tell us where we were at or what exactly we were going to be doing until we got there and did it.
Yeah. I remember all that. At that point, no one was really talking about that in the news, what was actually happening down there.
Right. They're really good about not, and for good reason, running operations without a lot of things being told.
Yeah.
And even if you look us up on the internet about different things we're involved in, you will find very little.
Yeah. Okay, so you finished up down there. Then where'd you go?
At a certain point, we ended up being deployed for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I got to go to the armory, and they had all this equipment coming in, desert-style equipment. And so
where are you at? Where's the armory at?
It was in Murphy, North Carolina.
Okay.
That armory is still there, but after about the 4th deployment, they shut that armory down, and now I think it's going to be used for the college for law enforcement to be training there, which I'm glad to see it getting put to good use. And the fire department keeps their ladder truck stored there. But before we went, some of the guys thought, "Oh, well, they'll not deploy us there," and I'm like, they're giving us a lot of desert gear, and it's not just because they want something to do with it. So most likely we're going to be going somewhere that involves the desert. So sure enough, we got our deployment, sent us out. We ended up getting deployed and sent over there at least a month, maybe 2 months before the unit that we were supposed to be assigned or attached to, the 16th.
How did they get you over there?
We flew on a big aircraft.
Like a C-130 kind of thing?
Yeah, C-130 or C-5. I can't remember all those details anymore. But
yeah.
Got us there, got off the bus. Got off the plane, got on the bus.
You said Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Drove around there to these different tent cities and tried to find out where we were supposed to be. And everybody at those different places were like, we don't know where you're supposed to be. So I suggested that we get back on the plane and go back home. And quickly they found somewhere for us to stay.
What was it like over there when you landed? What was your impression?
Oh, it was obviously the desert time, very hot. Not for a guy from Florida, it wasn't humid. So it was a different type of heat. And I knew that if I had my fluids built up, I could tolerate it well. But those first 3 days was very miserable. And we were all kind of snapping at each other a little bit, but not sure what's going on, what we were going to be doing. And the heat was miserable. They had us started doing stuff like setting up tents for other guys that were coming in and building outhouses and stuff like that. And just waiting around while we got acclimated, doing what I considered kind of menial stuff. I went out and checked around the compound where we were staying to find out what kind of security it had. And I was kind of shocked that we were kind of sitting there in the open for anybody to mess with. And I asked some of the guys on the perimeter what experience they had with security, and some of them said, I'm a desk clerk. I haven't fired my weapon since basic training. And so I said, since we wasn't sure what we was going to be doing, and they just kind of seemed to be inventing stuff for us to do, I said, well, I passed it up to the chain of command. Why can't we do security for the compound, set up security? So that did go up the chain, and we did start kind of making things more secure. So I'm not saying it was because of my idea, but they were kind of started sending us around and setting up these base camps, setting up security, moving us out, and having some other company move in to that camp. And we would escort convoys. When the war started, we started handling prisoners and security camps and security operations and patrolling towns and stuff like that.
Yeah, when the war, the buildup to the war, it must have been massive over there, right? All the infrastructure.
Well, and the areas that we were at, it seemed very rural, more desert than anything, and little towns. And one of our jobs was to just patrol the town and keep people out of trouble at those towns. If we found anybody there, we had to check to see if they had authorization to be there, make sure nothing bad was going on. Sometimes we would buy food from the local people there just so we could have some kind of normal food. We found a place to buy pizza. We found a place to buy eggs, and we'd fix our own eggs and stuff like that.
Because what were you guys eating?
Well, we were eating MREs, and we had an excellent cooking attachment. Part of our department, or part of our company, we had these cooking crew, and they would do everything they could to make good food for us when we were back at base camp. They would try to make us normal food, but when we were out in the field, it was MREs.
Describe the MREs to me.
2,000 to 3,000 calories per pack, and dehydrated, and sometimes flavorless, and you weren't always in a position to fix it in a way that was palatable, but you ate it because you were hungry. And And there were some things that were really good and some things everybody hated. But
What were the good ones and what were the bad ones?
well, some people did not like the chicken a la king, which was some rice and chicken and stuff like it. But it came in the pack with a really good candy bar. And some of the packs come with little jars of Texas Pete taco hot sauce. And that was like we traded that stuff like gold. And that would go on everything to improve the flavor and stuff like that. We liked the ham, meat loaf. It was like a ham patty that had been smashed together. And they also sent out a food truck where they made burgers, so we could stand in line and get something that tasted like something we'd get at home. And I jokingly said I'd like to have a double camel cheeseburger. I think we all kind of joked about that a little bit. But it was nice. We got a soda. It was usually hot.
No ice.
No ice. Water was hot. All that stuff would sit on pallets out in the sun. But it was still good. At least it was nice to have.
Yeah. The build up to the war, were they telling you guys anything, or was it just kind of everybody's just on a need to know?
Yeah, right. So even when we started going into the combat part of our operations, we did not know exactly. We weren't sure most of us weren't sure if this was still just a dry run or a test. We thought, okay, we're going to go so far, and they're going to say, okay, just turn around, go back. This was just a test. But we went on in and we...
What did they have you guys do? Are you traveling with everybody then?
We were escorting convoys, trying to keep them safe. And then...
Are you in Humvees at this point?
Humvees, yes. And the Humvees were nice, better than walking, but they only offered a little bit of protection. And one of my jobs was to sit up in the turret and man the gun.
What's the gun in there?
M60.
Did you like that gun?
It was very effective. And we had a lot of stuff in our vehicle, grenades, light anti-tank weapons, rocket launchers, crates of M60 rounds, M16s, 45s, and their rounds, and a few other weapons. So we were heavily armed.
Did your Humvee have the cloth doors or the?
We had the material that the rest of the Humvee was made out of, but it offered just a little shrapnel protection, not a lot. So we found out later, unfortunately, through some guys died and some got injured hitting road explosives, and vehicles flipped and hurt and killed.
Okay, so you're there. Tell me about the buildup in that day that you started going in. What was that like? What was the mood like, and what were you thinking?
I think we were all kind of anxious, but we knew we were as prepared as we were ever going to be. We were determined to hopefully just do our job, get in there, do what we had to do, get everybody in and out safely. I think many of us thought there was some that wasn't going to come back. But thankfully, most of the Iraqi soldiers were willing to surrender as quickly as we could get to them, and sometimes faster. There was only certain ones that were very, very loyal and wanted to hurt and do damage, but most wanted to surrender, and we tried to treat the prisoners with as much compassion as we could without falling victim ourselves.
Tell me a little bit of the prisoner story. Tell me some of those stories, like how would you come across them, and how would you guys deal with them when you're in?
Well, sometimes they were caught and then brought out by other units. Like we ended up being assigned to the 101st under the 6th MP Battalion. The 101st, I thought, took very good care of us. And but anyway, we would go out And sometimes I would have 25, 30 prisoners to manage by myself. And that was the same with a lot of other guys. We had, zip ties, and we ran out of those.
You're saying just you had 25 guys.
Yeah. And, there would be some other guys from my unit around there. They'd be handling as many as I was handling. We'd run them back to a holding area, go back out and get another group, run them in, run out and get another group, run those in. And that once they got in the holding area, they were processed and handled from there. Then we just did the security for the compound, and went back on patrol, had checkpoints set up.
What was their demeanor, the prisoners mostly?
Most of them didn't seem like they could understand what we said, but they understood our gestures. We gestured for them to get down or stand up or walk or whatever, and we'd each have to kind of pat them down, look for any materials on them that might be useful or a threat. And some of their officers were taking off their ranks and throwing them, so nobody would know who or what they were.
I'd heard that a lot of them just didn't have water or hadn't been fed for a while, so they were pretty depleted.
Yes. Yeah, they were ready to surrender. And they knew based on our reputation that the best thing for them to do would be to surrender, and they would be probably better off ultimately.
How far were you guys behind the front, would you guess?
Well, I'm not sure where all of my unit was at, but I know that we were set up at what was called Checkpoint Juliet, and there was like a Alpha checkpoint that was much further in. And so I'm not really sure how far we were in or up to.
Were you guys constantly moving, though? Once it started?
Up to that point, it seemed like we wouldn't stay anywhere for very long before we got moved to another area, or we were doing some kind of operation, either security or patrol or convoy or something somewhere.
What are some of the most interesting things that happened to you over there? The stories that you remember?
Well, one of the things I remember is we were doing a checkpoint for civilians to come through, and that we had MPs there. We had some of the Saudi police there, and one vehicle had pulled out of the line of traffic and started running towards our point, and I was setting up at the top with a 60 gun, and I was trying to do everything I could to try to get them to stop and not come any further. And I had to think in my head, okay, am I going to shoot this vehicle up? What am I going to do to try to get them to stop if they don't stop? At what point am I going to have to engage them before they become a threat? So I let my guys on the ground know that I was going to have to demount my position and approach the vehicle. And I jumped off the top and I ran down with my 45 up to the vehicle and met them with my 45 pointed at their face, and they got the message and stopped. But I thought that would be the best way to stop that threat without risking everybody else around. And they stopped, and it turned out they were just two civilian contractors wanting to know if they could bypass everybody else to get in to the checkpoint. And I thought, well, we just came so close to, causing an international incident and taking some lives over somebody just being in a hurry, just like a person would here. They don't realize how much of a threat they've posed.
What's the funniest thing that happened over there, do you think?
Well, probably shouldn't tell this one. I guess the funny thing is when we were out there on the checkpoints, he would be out there for days and days and days without seeing anybody or anything. So we tried to find different ways to kind of entertain ourselves, while we kept watch, because the monotony was ridiculous. And there was only like 3 of us. So we heard on the radio that they got some new recruits. So I said, let's get on the radio and see if we can get one of those guys to our team. And that way we could have 2 on, 2 off all the time. We tried using our mallets under vehicles for play baseball, whatever else we could do. We had a little kangaroo mouse as a pet. We'd have little scorpion wars, stuff like anything to try to, keep us relatively entertained while we waited. We were sitting in, I'll tell you this right quick too. We were sitting in a vehicle listening to Armed Forces Network, and they had reported that there was no more troops in Iraq. They'd all been pulled out, and we're sitting there looking at each other. We just had a sandstorm the previous night. So I think somebody missed the memo, or maybe we should check on this.
What was the sandstorm like?
The sandstorms were horrible. You could not see. You had to keep your face and your eyes protected, and especially if you rode in the top of the vehicle like I did, the sand would constantly be in your face, and we did check security points for helicopter refuels too. So between them coming in, stirring up sand, and the sandstorms, everything that you had sand in it, even for years after you got back.
What was the hardest thing or the worst thing that you felt like you dealt with over there?
The hardest thing was not knowing when you were going to get to come home, if you're going to get to come home, what was going to be next, your family back home, the situation back home. A lot of the guys came back to their businesses having been ruined, because many of them had businesses in order to be able to be deployable. If they were employed somewhere, they lost their jobs lots of times. They lost their loved ones because their loved ones had learned to live life without them, their mates and their children. So they had to try to reestablish those connections. Never could. So it went from being out there doing their job to coming back to everything being out of order and never being able to fix it.
Yeah.
And we really didn't have it that bad while we're there. Not like the Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans and Korean veterans, and it was rough, but it wasn't that we got welcomed back. They had a parade for us. Everybody was really nice and friendly, and let's buy you a drink. And it wasn't like for the Vietnam veterans. We felt like we had been successful. Most everybody in our unit came back alive with minimal injuries, other than maybe an emotional, and injuries that had not showed up yet.
Yeah.
But
it was kind of short-lived war, wasn't it?
Right.
There was huge buildup, and then it just was over so quick.
But after we got back, that's when a lot of started getting hard for a lot of the guys.
Did you experience that yourself?
Yes, I did. I had a son that was 1 month old when I went overseas, and he didn't want anything to do with me for the first couple of years after I was back. It's like I was a stranger. It's back into the situation. My wife adapted very well to my being back, but my son did not. And and some of the guys seemed to have started developing health issues and other issues after we got back. And we lost some after we got back to either suicide or some other issue.
So you saw that firsthand, and you recognized that early on.
Right. So whenever I got into back into healthcare, like I worked in nursing homes and hospitals in my civilian life, started doing home health care with a local company. And just about everyone I go see is a veteran, either a Vietnam veteran or Korean. I used to have World War II vets when I first started. I would listen to their stories and talk to them, ask them questions, let them tell me things. And most of them would be very open and telling me things that they experienced. And it was very educational for me. As a matter of fact, when I was over in Desert Shield Desert Storm, the guys in my unit that were Vietnam vets, I would seek their guidance because I knew that they would have the most experience as to how to deal with things.
What kind of things would they tell you?
Well, they would say, keep your mouth shut, keep your head low, just, do what you're told and try not to stay, try to stay out of situations as much as you can. And, and, you know, like I said, we had guys that were under a lot of stress, those in leadership situations, especially our lieutenants that felt responsible. You could really see the stress on them, and our higher ranking NCOs, you could see the stress on them. And every chance I got, I would try to go and talk to them privately and let them, talk to me off the record to help them deal with what they were dealing with.
Tell me the things you've learned from just dealing with the veterans in the health world, doing your home health care.
Well, the ones that get help from the VA, they very much appreciate the help from the VA. Some could use a lot more help. Some seem to get a whole lot of help. It's tough for the older ones without some kind of advocacy on their behalf to deal with some of the processes sometimes. Like they have an app. A lot of the guys, they don't know how to use an app and the computer and trying to call and be on the phone for a long time, trying to get meds they need and keeping up with appointments. And a lot of them still struggle with that.
So there's a logistical thing for a lot of guys,
Right.
just to even get in the system to get help.
Right. After they get past that point, then just trying to utilize that help, keeping up with appointments without some loved one or some company like I'm in to help make sure they remember, okay, you're starting to get low on these meds. You need to call and find out about them. You have a doctor's appointment coming up on this day and stuff like that. Make sure you eat.
What are the common things? Having talked to a lot of, especially Vietnam vets, they talk about a lot of stuff just starts like flashbacks and dreams and just feelings that come back when they're older in life, like come back with a vengeance. Have you found that, and what's helpful for that?
Yes, I have absolutely found that to be true. I'm not exactly sure why that happens that way, but I've had it kind of happen to me too. I would be out and a chopper would fly over and automatically I would be in the middle of the desert expecting certain things to happen. And I mean, I wasn't through as much trauma as they went through, so I could only imagine. I would try to put myself in their shoes as much as I could and say, okay, so what are you thinking right now? How does that make you feel? Do you think, and ask them questions and try to listen to them, try to let them get it off their chest and say, it's okay, you're safe now. You're here. You don't have to deal with that anymore. Nothing you could do about it. Nothing you can do about it now. All you can do is go forward and that's all you can do.
What advice do you give loved ones, spouses, kids, just people who have friends or loved ones who are veterans, and how they can be helpful in that way?
Yeah, I try to help them understand that why their loved one might act a certain way at certain times, why they might shut down, why they might lose their temper. Not to mention that, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and dementia and all that kind of thing plays into a factor. Some of that life in the past that they once regulated, they're not able to regulate anymore. It was a big traumatic part of their past. And now that part seems to start dominating their thinking. And that starts being what they revert to, especially when things start getting confusing and frustrating and stuff like that.
What do you recommend for older veterans who are kind of struggling through this and going through these things?
And find support, find support from somewhere, from somebody that understands. I know that we all kind of laugh. They try to get counseling through the VA. And sometimes all the veterans are like, hey, everything, I've heard all this before. It's not really helping. But if you can find other veterans to talk to that understand the situation and not isolate yourself and not look to other things to deal with your issues like drinking, drugs, gambling, things like that. It'll make you kind of feel okay for a moment, but later you're going to feel worse. So you're going to have to find some other way to cope other than that.
You got into the military because you wanted that structure. You thought it's a way to give back. How do you reflect on that now?
Well, I did what I did because I thought it was the best thing to do at the time. And, when I got back from the Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I knew that I was going to be getting out. I wasn't going to stay any longer. I'd had enough. There were certain aspects of it that I really had enough of, and any vet will tell you. A lot of the nonsense and the deception and the bull gets very old, and you stop getting to a point where you've paid enough for the price. So you're done with that. And I was done with that. And I told my folks, I'm getting out. And they were like, no, especially my dad, no, don't get out. You're going to get promoted really fast now, and you're going to mess up your military career. And I said, well, things about me have changed. I don't feel the same way anymore. I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. There's other things I want to volunteer to do to help others, and I don't want to do that anymore. And I said, we will be back in Iraq or somewhere else in very short time. I promise you that. And sure enough, after I got out my unit, they got deployed for Enduring Freedom, Guantanamo, Afghanistan. I think there was like 4 or 5 different deployments after I got back that they were sent to. And some of those guys come back changed.
It's a heavy price.
Yeah, it's a heavy price.
Yeah. For even the most mundane thing, I feel like for guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And when you're sent to these other places, even though they try to vaccinate you and prepare you, you're like landing in a different world. You're exposed to things that you weren't exposed to back home, and your body doesn't know how to deal with it. Plus all these 15 different shots they give you, plus the different pills they get you. And then you come back and all of a sudden you start developing these issues that you don't understand and no one else seems to understand, other than it's common with everybody that went to that place and was exposed to these things. And it takes a long time for the government to say, okay, yeah, we think you all was exposed to this or that, and that's why you might be having these symptoms.
Anything else you want to talk about or discuss?
Well, I enjoy doing home health care, and my veteran clients are taking my experience that I had during that time and trying to use that to help them and their family. That's my way of trying to take that situation I was in and turn it into something good. Every experience that I've ever had in my life, good or bad, I try to take that and say, okay, how can I use that to help others deal with whatever it is they may be going through, whether they're a veteran or something else? Then I try to help, and just lots of times just being someone to listen and not be judgmental and giving all these impractical suggestions. Just listening and understanding. That's all they need.
Well, thank you so much, man. Thanks for your service, and thanks for what you're doing for the vets after.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking too. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. If you or someone that you know isn't getting the VA benefits that you've earned, please click this link. We've teamed up with a group of experts that can help veterans build stronger VA claims and get the benefits they deserve. Please click this link for a free consultation.